Okay, next up, we have a really enjoyable panel, and I like this one. Let me get the name, The Locus of Control, Networks versus Individuals. So you remember the theme of this event is the meeting of the waters and how we're seeing the confluence of the organizational and people-centric approaches to personal data. So with me today, I have Julian Ranger. He's here in person. And we have Stefan from IPification here with us on Zoom, CEO of IPification. Welcome, Stefan.
All
right, so what we're going to do is we're going to have
a dialogue between Julian and Stefan. And let me make sure this is on. So we're going to have a dialogue between Julian and Stefan, and they're going to compare and contrast these different approaches. And the question is, in corner A, we have the organizational-centric approach to personal data and identity. In corner B, we have the people-centric approach to personal data and identity. And the question is, will they knock each other out? Will one dilute the other? Or will they find some happy middle ground and give a big hug at the end? So let's dig right into it. So let's start with Stefan and the organizational-centric approach to personal data. Where do you think things are, and what's driving this world?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Michael, for the intro. I mean, I'm not sure I will be able to knock out Julian. He seems a very strong person in the right corner. I wouldn't. I mean, I like the intro of the idea, but I think that the things are really not black and white as we listen to the whole event, etc. So. I like the picture, that is sitting there in introduction of the panel, that there are two streams, kind of converging to one another. And I think this is really the situation we are in. So far, it's been developed like kind of a separate silos, and the industry has been dominated by far, as organization managing our personal data. And identity, but I mean, as we are seeing that the trend of decentralization and more of people-centric approaches coming on board, it's going to mud the water, as they like to say. But I think it's not one way or the other. Definitely, it's a process, and I see it moving forward that. The two streams will definitely develop alongside, because, for many different reasons, that the world needs both approaches when it comes to this complex issue of managing the personal data and identity.
And just so we have some context for where you're coming from, can you explain what IPification does and your role in the industry?
Yeah, I mean, what we are doing is we are actually working with telecom network operators to bring what we like to call a missing piece in terms of the online identity verification and authentication. So we are helping to add this underlying security in terms of 2FA without any friction, which is based on the network and the IP addresses that the telecom networks manage. So aside from helping to prevent a lot of fraud type of issues related to SIM swaps, to account takeovers, device changes, etc., it also helps to streamline some of the straightforward processes of verifying some of the common user identifiers, such as phone numbers, etc., without any friction, which is currently, using SMS and other methods.
Perfect. And Julian, how about you? So you're coming into this new people-centric approach, and what can you tell us about that?
Okay, so first of all, I should say who I am. So I'm the founder and chairman of a company called DigiMe, and we are leading what we would call data facilitator for individuals. So we enable any individual to get all of their data. So today, using our platform, you can get more data about yourself than anyone has ever done before, whether that's medical data, wearables, finance, social, or media, into your own highly encrypted, decentralized store, which only you do. And then any service can come and ask you for the data. Now that all exists today. You can go out and use it. It takes hours to get going. So we're at that leading edge of personal data usage from the individual. But where are we on the river, to use your analogy? So the reality is today that 98% plus of data is owned by and managed by the businesses and stuff like that. And we're 2% or less on the move to what we call human centricity. So what's going to drive that change, and when's it going to happen? When does I think it's the blue part of your river, which is the personal part, when does that grow out? Well, actually, it's happening right now. If there's more and more companies trying to operate in the blue area, and as I say, we're a leader in that, but you're now seeing some of the world's biggest companies, and I can speak to anyone offline about who they are and various things like that, and governments starting to say, actually, I want to go to the individual. Now, you'd think that that's because of privacy, security, consent, trust, all of those things. But actually, it's for the simple reason that when you go to the individual, you get more data than you can get from trying to track them or do something else. And it's better data. And it's actually simpler. You can get data in hours. You don't have to go through all these hoops and everything else. You just have to convince the individual. And you get privacy, security, and consent. So there is a move, because if you take health as a good example, you actually can't go forwards with health in the personalized medicine that we want without doing it via the individual. And so the EU has said by 2030, they want everybody to own all of their health data, as an example. You can already do that today in various countries, what we do. So it's because of more and better data, and it's because it's simpler, and privacy. So the Blue River is opening up. Now, how quickly will it open up? I'd love to tell you that this year we'll have knocked off 5% or 10%, who knows? But it's certainly in the next couple of years, the Blue River won't be a trickle. You'll start to see actual real world implementations, millions of people doing new things, better things, and it going forwards. Then at some point, and I can't tell you whether it's 18 months, 2 years, or 3 years, that trickle will grow into a full-fledged river as you start to get that exponential takeoff, because people will see how easy it is to use the data, and that it's better data than if you're doing it the wrong way. And then the river will become a delta, because when you actually open up personal data, when it's not stuck in its silos, you can do massively, massively more. So I believe that river will become a massive delta, much, 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 much more use of personal data than we do today.
All right,
but will the brown disappear?
Yeah, and that's where I wanted to jump in. So the question is this utopia idea of us having total sovereignty over self going to take over the organizational centric approach to the point that we can just, we are in total self, have agency and autonomy over everything? Or will we find some middle ground? So Stefan, where do you think we are with that? Is your kind of carrier-centric enterprise approach to data going to be completely consumed by this utopia that Julian's presenting?
No,
or will we find some middle ground?
I mean, there's already middle ground. I think legislation and this kind of initiative made it clear. I mean, like the users are the owners of their own data, right? Like so now I think that the bigger challenge is, I mean, how we enable the tools and whatever is needed for the users to really manage this data, and what Julian and what couple of your other speakers mentioned. I mean, how we can incentivize the users and make some standardized model that they can be incentivized in sharing this data. And this is what makes, I think, things much more complex. I mean, it's easier said than done eventually. I mean, like it's a great thing. It's as Julian said, it's not only about the privacy, although a lot of companies are using this notion around the business model, etc. But it's really about having some tangible success and results on a global scale in terms of the user adoption and solving all these stick points in terms of data governance, actually transferring the full data governance to a regular user, let's say, which comes with, in my opinion, a lot of implications that are currently not, let's say, carefully taught. Not talking about only the security side, the privacy, etc. But there's a lot of issues that need to be taken care before we say, hey, we can can easily switch to a full, kind of people-centric identity and personal data management.
Okay, and Julian, is it? Yeah. Stefan just said something really interesting. The user owns their data, and we hear about that a lot. But when we talk about this idea of ownership, it means I have it and you don't. Or we heard from I think Stefano had brought this up yesterday. If I can, one of the two of you did, where the data coming out of a car. Well, some of that data is just locked in and nobody can get to it, whether or not who owns it or not. Some of that data is actually imbued with the IP of the manufacturer of that particular device or service. And then some of that other data may actually be data that I can be controlling. Like I heard one the other day where, if you have a pacemaker, you don't actually own your heart rhythms because that's being controlled by the IP of the pacemaker company. And so you actually don't have a legal right to your own heart data. So like, what does that mean? We own our data, and it's not as easy just to say the consumer owns the data, is it?
No, it isn't. So I'm going to answer the brown bit first, then I'm going to answer the thing. So the answer is, even though the personal data economy, which will grow, and a lot of those questions have been answered, will grow into a delta, there'll always be other data held. There'll always be the brown part of the river.
And why?
Things like fraud detection. That's a great example, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want a loan, I might give you details about myself, my bank data and other stuff, but I'm not going to tell you that I applied for 4 credit cards and didn't do it, or I didn't pay off. So someone's got to still keep that data and still be able to do it. It's just a simple example where it couldn't possibly work as just individual provided data.
Well, and before we move on though, too, where's John Bruner? I was talking to him this morning about his discussion with Aegis yesterday too, and he did a great model on verifying the identity of companies as they get into messaging programs and such like that. And he says most of the supply chain verifies that one time, but doesn't continue to verify along the way. And I just wanted to reiterate and bring that back to what he was talking about yesterday, because that's also another point. You just said that I got rejected for a credit card 4 times because I was quote unquote a fraudster or doing bad acts. And that 5th time, if we don't keep that verification circle around, that's
correct. So there'll always be that piece. But what the blue bit will do is remove the bad part of the brown. But to come to your answer on data, I hate the phrase "own your data." In fact, I use the phrase "all of our individuals own a copy of their data." So my example that I use is if I go into a coffee shop, and assume I'm not a loyalty card member, but I'm just an ordinary person, I buy a cup of coffee with my credit card. Who owns that transaction? Well, clearly the coffee shop knows that they sold me a latte and a muffin, right? Mm-hmm. The credit card company knows that it came to £5.52, right? Or whatever it was. And my bank knows it's £5.52. So they all own a copy of that transaction legally, and will keep a copy of that transaction because they need to do it. But I also own a copy of that transaction. Now, hopefully it could be a digital receipt, but even if it's a physical receipt, and I know that it was a muffin, a cup of coffee that I paid by the credit card. And in fact, I know more than anybody else in that transaction.
And primarily because you know why you got that copy of the muffin.
True, but I also know just the sheer data. I know more than others. Now, I don't necessarily know the merchant ID and some of those other things there, but I know more than anyone else. But there is one big difference with an individual to all the other 3. I'm the only person with unlimited usage rights. I can do what the hell I like with that transaction information. The shop can only keep it to know that they sold it. The bank and the credit card can only use it either anonymously or to deduct from my bank account. I can tell the world I had a crap cup of coffee at Starbucks, right? I can give it to anybody. And in the limits, for example, with my medical data, I've got a full copy, but so does my doctor in the hospital where I did it, and they need to keep it for their negligence and other reasons, right? But I can print it off, put it on the windows of my car, drive around the world and show it to everybody. Mm-hmm. Anybody else does that, it's a privacy breach. So the big difference is that individuals own a copy of their data, right? But they are the only ones with unlimited usage rights. They can do it.
And then I get to choose whatever I want to do with that. And the economic models and the business models that Andrew Brudd popped up, we'll figure those out, but we don't have them.
We'll probably talk about that on the panel this afternoon when we're looking at the trust report. Yeah.
Okay, we have about 6 minutes left before Susan kicks me off, so I'm going to open it up to you guys. Yeah, Mr. Lee. Can't have a panel without a conversation from Lee.
Thanks, guys, for the presentation. My question is about a copy of the data. So I'm a fitness geek, right? So I have my Garmin, share that with Strava. That connects to pace up. Do I really want another copy of that data? I'm probably not that interested in it. And for the apps that I use, do all sorts of analysis. Now, I know that's just one example, but maybe, Julian, you can give us a hint to why we would care and in what circumstances we would care about having this copy.
It was sort of kind of predicted what we'll do this afternoon, but I will answer the question. You're not interested in your data natively. No one is, right? And that's an important point when we're looking at how this new market, this new river will grow. What you're interested in is in end results. So the reason you use Strava or whatever is because you like the graphs they give you or the location data or whatever else it does. But if you have a different use case and you want to use the same data and you need that history. So for example, insurance companies, it's in their best interest to help you stay healthy, and it's in your best interest to stay healthy. They can do that if you can share your fitness data with them, right? So that use case may be one that you want. You may have mental health issues, and actually the algorithms to help you with your mental health may want to look at how much activity you've done, right? So there's lots and lots of other use cases, which will mean that if you could get that data, get a copy, and then allow these other people to use it, all right, and now you understand that having your data has a purpose. And that's how this river grows. But you're not going to grow because you're going to say, I'm saying to you, as did you mean, hey, get a copy of your data. And you're going, yeah, what am I doing?
Well, and I think
It's the use cases.
I think you raised another really important point that I want to kind of respond to your question, Lee. It's that point of use case, but it's also I'm the single point of aggregation for all of my data across all of my silos. You know, I'm the one that does that web browsing. I'm the one that goes to the coffee shop. I'm the one that goes to the healthcare provider. I'm the one that's reading those books. And it actually came up on one of our panels yesterday, and I'll just to allude to it. When I can get that complete data set to myself, we've actually, and is Pat here from Ireland? Is that, I think that, yeah, there. He's working on a really interesting project with just 2 or 3 data points. We can, you know, I showed one yesterday about how we can predict depression within 6 months. He's working on a program that can detect it within 2 weeks, just with a handful of data points. So imagine if I had that pool of data available to me. I don't want to sell it. I don't want to do anything commercially with it, but I wanted to allow my psychologist to take a look at it for me, right? And can you look at everything that I'm doing in my life and help me understand why I'm happy right now? Maybe it's an eating problem. Maybe I'm not sleeping enough. Maybe I'm not talking to enough friends. Maybe I'm buying the wrong things, reading the wrong, you know, getting the wrong inputs. Who knows?
And there's
but there's so many things for that.
But it's the use cases drive your use of data, and then over a period of time, we will all understand that having our data and keeping the history of the data is vital for the new use cases that we want.
Right, and so with that in mind, so Stefan, you're sitting on your partnerships with the carriers on a treasure trove of data. And how do we bring that into the conversation? Is there a way for individuals to get a hold of that? Is that a new business model potentially for carriers down the road? Perhaps as an intermediary? How does that going to work?
I mean, you told it rightly. I mean, the carriers are sitting on what they like to say, a gold mine, right? Like of all your digital footprint eventually can be reflected in you know, kind of your carrier footprint. You know, whenever you're on 3G, 4G, 5G, you know, even when you are buying that coffee in Starbucks, you know, potentially your telecom carrier know about it. I mean, they know even beyond all the other, you know, parties that are taking part in the value chain because they own the network. So as long as they own the network, I mean, they have all the data they need. Now it's the question, I mean, how they are going and how they are utilizing these data. I mean, what we are doing with them and what we are seeing as a positive note is actually trying to actually utilize these data in a kind of legitimate interest for those users and actually protect them in many of their day-to-day occasions, which they are not able to do by themselves, right? Like the malicious actors and etc. As Julian said, I mean, you can't fight them off with your own data and pretending that you are keeping everything and that you are the only gateway of your own data. That's just not how it works and how the whole, you know, kind of data governance is currently structured. So yeah, I think the telecoms can play a very important role, and I think they're starting to realize their importance, in many of these, digital transformation opportunities they've missed. I think the identity and personal data governance is eventually something that they look at getting back, in a full swing in the industry.
Perfect. And one more question from John, and then we can wrap it up.
I apologize. I really more a point of clarity. I don't know if everyone realizes, but there are carriers globally that are offering this service today. It's typically called carrier data integration. And if you opt in as a consumer, you can actually use the data that the carrier has on you to perhaps pre-fill a bank loan for a car loan. And so they are actually creating the ability for you to use your personal data as a customer to a carrier. And I was talking to one in the UK here yesterday that has that product. So the example is there, and it's been around for a while, just not in a centralized form that you're saying. It's happening at a carrier level rather than a centralized for me level.
Well, and it sounds like players like an IPification or a DigiMe or anybody that's in the audience for us now could be, working with the carriers to open that up and make it more scalable for the market. Yeah. Well, gentlemen, it sounds like we're ending up with a big hug rather than knocking each other out.
It's a big hug.
Awesome. I love it. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Let's move to the next panel.
Thank you guys. Cheers.